record to the computer. I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so this project is a fun one. It really is. It's the one that students have always liked in the past. So we went over the overview. Okay, you can go ahead and take a look at on your own time. Yes, my son's asking if you can use an iPad. I said sure. All right, sorry about that. So that's it. Check the overview, see why we're doing this project all together. Like I stress this so much in all of my projects. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we spending valuable class time doing these things? So understand that point. The next one is art direction. This is the one that should have been posted to Canvas, but didn't. I'll fix that. In short, you're just gonna make either a Figma file, you're gonna upload an Illustrator file, or you're gonna just basically show me where you got your assets from. And so in this case, we found these assets, we put them into Figma. This could also be Illustrator. And this is where we can go ahead and copy out the SVG code, right? And this is all the stuff that we've been doing in the past 2 sessions. And I just wanted a single file where you could see that from. Also, I had you make if you're already collecting stuff, right? In past classes, I've had you make your collage. So in this case, we picked the topic of coffee, and then we just added all these pictures. And then from there, we either made or found the appropriate SVGs. We either made or found a color palette. Okay? And this will help you begin to start designing once you have all of your ideas and pieces in place. Right? And that's where we're going to be today. We're actually going to be getting the project onto GitHub and working through some of the pens. All right, so good on the art direction. Check, all right, thumbs. Okay. So if you just mimic this, heck, you can even come into this and just duplicate this Figma file, right? You can just create this as a copy, right? If you don't already know, you can come into here and just go duplicate, right? So you can go to this file that I've linked to and just duplicate, and then add in your own content for your own adding your own assets for your own content. You should be fine. So there's art direction. Okay. You don't have to submit a pen. There's that. And so that's going to be on Canvas. The next one, right, is where we are today. We're going to practice on CodePen, right? Make sure that we understand how all this stuff works. And then we're going to today apply this thing to GitHub. We're actually going to push this to GitHub. Right, and we'll do that at the end of class, and that is easy as going to the repo and hitting the use template button, right? And now that we have that from Web 1, like, oh, this makes it really, really easy to bring an entire project in. And then lastly, right, after we submit this next week, I have it tentatively, so calm down, for this Tuesday, like, let's get version 1 in, right? Submit it, and then you revise it. Like how can this thing be improved after you've gotten some feedback? How can this thing be improved after you have a better understanding of GreenSock and SVGs all together? And that's the process for this project and essentially all the projects. Good. Check. Process overview. Okay. What are you getting with Colin? Like a big old process overview about how to work. Okay. All right. All that said, let's go ahead and from the course site, we're going to go into the Google Doodle part, and we're going to go practice on CodePen. We're going to walk through these pens on CodePen. All right, so this isn't going to be using the Master Professor pen today. It's going to be actually using the examples, the linked out pens. What I've done is in the first link right here in class examples, I've just shared the entire collection. These are all of the pens that we're going to be going through in class, right? Not all of them, but the majority of them. And go ahead, and if you're fall behind, you can just go ahead and go to any of these pens. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and set the stage here. You know what, I take that back. I'm gonna go ahead and pop open into the Professor pen because that might help. All right, so if you wanna head over to the Professor pen, we can do this. And I think what this will allow me to do is show you how all these components come together. All right, so here is a template we're going to be using for the final project. Okay. And I don't want you to submit this as a CodePen pen because we practice on CodePen. We don't, right? We apply to GitHub, practice on CodePen, apply to GitHub. So the first thing here is we have the Google Doodle template. And this is the template I provide for you. And basically, I just went to Google and just borrowed their code. That's it. Right. So there's the Google search and there's the Feeling Lucky button. And basically, all of our stuff is going to be inside of this ID of stage. And you don't have to do anything outside of the stage. Yes, you can design the background using the body element. So if you wanted to change the background color, you can come in here and select the body and make it be a different color. But really, all of your elements inside of this, inside of the project should be inside. One more time, all of your elements for your project should be inside of this element with the ID of stage. Like all of your SVGs are here, okay? And all of your styling for your template are here. Okay? So you don't have to worry about anything else. Everything else is taken care of for you, even the little icon there, and which I'll show you. All right, so before I move on to the CSS, is everybody clear on the HTML portion of this? Right, this is where all of your good stuff goes here. This is your content. Check, check. With me? I know you're tired, right? Is it Corey that said he was tired?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm making some coffee right now.
All right, good stuff. I'm always going to condone that. All right, so there's all of our elements inside of that. Okay. All right, moving on down. Right, where did this actual icon come from? Like, how do we get this layout? Well, I've provided you an external, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this. So I'm going to close this up for right now. And basically what I've linked to is this external style sheet. And I made this external style sheet for you. We can link that up inside of our CSS. And it's just the styling for the Google Doodle pen. And watch what happens when we apply this. Watch what happens when we apply this. Come on, CodePen, let's go. Maybe CodePen is tired too. All right. Oh, I put it in the wrong spot. All right, that's my fault, CodePen. I shouldn't blame you. All right, hit save and yes, and that puts in this icon right here. But where is this icon? It's not in our HTML. Right? It's not in our CSS. It is inside of this path right here. And if you actually take a look at the CSS on this pen, right? Remember all these icons are code? That right there is the encoding for that icon. And it weighs essentially nothing, right? It weighs as much as that text that is highlighted, which is very, very small. Yeah. And so this is part of the reason, like Google's homepage can be so fast is because this isn't an image, right? This is basically the code to make an image. And that's very, very cool. And that's what we've been doing with SVGs. Okay. So again, all of our good stuff goes inside of this ID of stage, right? Now, Colin, why do you keep repeating this? Because someone's going to put stuff outside of the stage and kind of make this harder than it needs to be. Good. All right. So there is our initial styling. And then if we want any JavaScript, right, we're not going to load in jQuery. We're going to load in GreenSock to do all of our animation. And really, this class session is about explaining the template. Right? Next class session, we're going to be animating the template. Right? We'll do a little bit today, but really, this is the idea of what is this template that I have given you that we're all going to use. Okay. All right. So this is for next class. This is for maybe some of it today. All right. So that is the template itself. Any questions on the template so far? Good, good. All right. All right. So inside of the template there, the first thing you're going to notice is this ID of stage. And now this is the initial size of the template, right, of this gray box. What you can do is I want you to change this, right? We were hard pressed in our research to find 2 Google Doodles that were the same dimensions, right? You should be able to make a container that is of whatever size you need it to be, okay? So don't use the dimensions that are here, change them. That's the first place of customizing this, is change the canvas size. Okay. Change the canvas size. Okay. So change this. Right. You're the multiple exclamation point generation. There you go. Yeah. Make this be whatever you want. And so for today, I'm just going to have it be 400 by 200 for easy math. Oh, that's really weird. Width of 400, height of 200. And we might come and change that. Is that too small for you today? Good. See, designers can't make up their minds. I also have this backwards. All right. For this project to work, right? Notice these dimensions, these units are fixed sizes. Okay, use fixed sizes to make your life easier. Don't try to make the canvas responsive for this project. It will only complicate things. So go ahead and use fixed units. Okay. Fixed units. All right. So there's that. We're all on the same page there. So that is setting the stage. That is the Google Doodle template. All right, so let's go ahead and do the easy part here. Get some content for our template, and our content can come in as regular content. So in this case, I just have an H1 that says coffee. And the same thing here. So I'm gonna get rid of the template. Okay, I can also have an image. So here is the actual Google image. Okay. And as we know, right, we can animate images. Okay, so right now, before we do any animation, right, we're focusing right now on just the content. So this is a plain old image that we can put in there, right? Because this isn't anything special. Right? And I think that's what I'm trying to get this point across here. Is it's just a container. Okay, and then lastly, of course, where we've been is we want an SVG. So let me go ahead and grab an SVG like this circle right here. Okay. So here is this circle, right? There's the view box from last lecture, and we can paste in our SVG like so. And if we wanted to reference that SVG, we can give it an ID or a class. So we're gonna come here and give this, I think, an ID of circle. Okay. So we can reference it. All right, there you see the circle, and we can do, right, our diagnostic styling. Go ahead and grab the ID of circle and hit outline, 1px solid, red and gray. Looks good today. All right, and there's our circle, right? And if we can select it, we can change it, and that's what we're trying to do. All right, there is a very, very straightforward part about the HTML. Any questions so far on adding the stage or the content to the stage? All right, I'm gonna be asking you to do a lot of feedback today because you all appear tired. So thumbs, get that thumb emoji ready. All right. Corey, you get that coffee made yet?
Just finished it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so there's that. Or hit spacebar, say something. Okay, let's see here. So there's that. There is our Google Doodle content. We are moving exceedingly fast, but that's okay. All right, the next thing we're going to do is SVG as code. And I just showed you an example of that. Here is an isolated pen. All right, I'm going to copy these elements in. And again, you can make these in Figma, you can make these in Illustrator, or you can find them on the internet and copy the code, right? We've spent the last 2 class sessions looking at that. I'm going to come in here and drop in these IDs. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this first ID of circle because now I have a duplicate ID of circle. All right, so what we're gonna, for your project, you're essentially really only gonna have one SVG, and you're gonna have many parents inside of that. And so what I've done here is I've just made multiple SVGs just for demonstration purposes, but really, you know, you can have one SVG and a child is gonna be circle, a child is gonna be rect, a child is gonna be path inside of your SVG, and that would be the easier way to manage this. All right, so now we got those SVGs inside of our template right here. Okay, we can go ahead and begin to animate them. Notice that this right here is an image. This is a JPEG. This is not an SVG. These are SVGs because I can't select them. So we've put in SVGs as code, and what do I have here? There. We can come in here and we can restyle all of our SVGs. And so let me put that over there. Okay. So we're going to select the SVG parent, and immediately this says, hey, change all the height of the SVGs. Okay, in this case, make them all 100 pixel square. And then with a rehash of our previous classes, let's see here. Let's pick a circle again. So we have this ID of circle. We want to make sure that we can get this thing. Another way to do diagnostic styling, right, from Web 1 is just hit display none. Make the thing go away. If it goes away, right, it didn't go away. That means I did what, y'all? Typed incorrectly. Okay. So did it go away? Yes. Okay. Oh, heads up on the internet. It's just been slow everywhere. Everyone's pulling from the same CDN, and it's just very, very slow right now. All right, so we have ID of circle, display none, right? Change, give it a background of red. I keep doing this because I want you to do this. I need you to be able to select any element there. And if you can't select it, all the work that you do inside of JavaScript is for nothing. Okay, we have to be able to select it with CSS. This will save you so much time. Select it with CSS, get the right selector, then put this into your JavaScript. All right, so now that we know that we have the right element selected, I'm gonna go ahead and comment that out. And then we can just begin to change it. We know that with SVGs, to actually change the color of the element, we're not gonna use background, we're gonna use fill, okay? And just to move quickly here, I'm gonna go ahead and copy all of this just so you can see the difference. And so the point, the two things to take away from this is be able to select any SVG that you put out there, and two SVGs use different properties to do backgrounds. It's not background, it's fill. You're filling in the property. Right. All right. Thumbs. You know, my son came up with a brand new, and he says, if it's good, it's thumbs up. And if it's bad, it's thumbs all the way down. And he's got this new thing called thumb side, where he puts his thumb to the side, right? And then he's got all the degrees in between to justify and clarify how he's feeling. I wish we had that. Someone make that. Thumbs in all ranges and orientations.
Well, what movie is it from? Gladiator, with the thumbs and then slowly turns it down. What movie is that? Yeah, your son just, that's what your son just made me think of. I think he's him.
Wow, I go see very few movies, and that was one of the few movies I actually went and saw in the theater. And that was in college. Wow, I'm ancient. Sorry, y'all. All right, if you haven't seen Gladiator, you should go see it. It's a good flick. It's a good movie. See, I'm also old because I said flick. All right, there's that. Okay. All right. So again, selecting elements, changing elements, right? Or sorry, creating elements, selecting elements. We need to be able to do those two things. So there's SVG as code. Let me pin that tab. All right, moving on. All right, so now we're going to talk about the initial positioning of elements. So we're going to be animating things with GreenSock, right? But we can also still continue to use CSS to do animation, and we also can continue to use CSS to do the initial positioning, right? And so what this pen is trying to show you is when you first load your animation, maybe you want them to be in a specific spot and then move them from that spot. And the easiest way to do this, and the most straightforward way, right, to do initial positioning before things start animating, right, is to use Web 1, Web 1 positioning properties, right? So let's go ahead and, all right, I'm gonna get rid of all this. You can take a look at the pins. All right. All right. So we know from Web 1, let's take a quick detour here. All right. Let's take a quick refresher of our position properties. Okay. All right, so we have an element here, H1. All right. All right, so we know from Web 1 that everything is positioned statically, right? So if we take this H1, all right, make sure that we have the H1. I'm gonna go ahead and change its color. I miss when C tab used to do color. Now it doesn't do that anymore. All right, so good. We have the right element selected. And if we come in here and do position static from Web 1, get your refresher, right? It doesn't do anything. Like we talked about in Web 1, right? If you type position static, it's kind of code smell, right? Stinky code. It's this idea of, well, everything is set to position static by default, like saying background transparent. Well, background transparent is the default. So there's very few situations where you need position static. Typically, it's to change a type of positioning, right? So we're going to go ahead now and take a look at position relative. And relative is selfish, right? I'm giving you a refresher from Web 1. Relative says I'm relative myself. I move from my 0, 0. So where my cursor is, this is where it's position relative. And again, if you needed to see all these, right, thank goodness we have the dev tools. Basically says, go, I can't follow Colin this morning. What are the position properties, right? They'll tell you. They're all right here, okay? And inside of this, when I set position relative, we can expand upon this, and there are all your position properties. Do I expect you to memorize those? Never. We memorize very, very little, right? We have to understand a whole lot. So there is position relative, right? So let me refresh that. And once we have this thing selected, it's going to move relative to itself. It's independent. It says I'm going to do my thing. So there's that. And we have the top property. So there's 100 pixels down, and we have the left property, which is 100 pixels over. Okay. And now I'm going to hold the up arrow and the down arrow, and you can see this thing begin to move. And that's how you're going to position everything. Okay. All right, so there is static positioning. It's relative to itself. Okay. How this helps you is when we can do relative parent, absolute child, but absolute positioning says I am completely dependent upon the parent. Okay, so in this case, who's the parent of H1? This ID of main. And so we're going to come in here and go a top of 100 px. So the first way we use the dev tools. The next way we're going to use the, what's it called? Oh, we're going to use a CodePen here. What's it called? CodePen. Go ahead and refresh that. Okay, now notice, right, we did the same 100, 100, but it's in a different spot. Okay, and this is in a quirk. This isn't one of the bugs in CSS. This is the way positioning is done. So there's your refresher on positioning, and notice that part of its positioning, right, is the, right, that, oh, sorry, not a part of its positioning is the padding on there. Okay, and again, if we take away the position property altogether, right, top left, right, bottom left do nothing. Okay, so anytime we see these properties of top, right, bottom, and left inside, right, from Web 1, like they do nothing. Notice that the dev tool like gives us this reminder, hey, once you turn positioning off, these properties of top, right, bottom, and left do nothing for you. Right, they're useless at this point. All right, and the last one that we're going to be using for this is position fixed, right? Fixed basically says, forget this, I'm going to do my own thing, right? I'm leaving the family entirely, right? I'm not going to move relative to the family. I'm going to move relative to myself. And position fixed says, if you do a top of 0, right, this is when it actually leaves the box and leaves the container. Okay, heck, we can do bottom of 0 to really drive this point home here, right? Good. there is your quick rehash on positioning. Okay, it's bottom to the page, right? Not to the parent. So once we get a refresher on positioning, now that we can actually begin to apply this, we're going to use relative parent. In this case, the parent is the stage. So pos colon R. Oh, I want that back. There it is. I have to do hyphen R. Or is it poser? PSR tab. There you go. Poser, PSR tab. So relative parent, because the ID of stage is the parent, and absolute child. So least surprise tells us do POSA. Yeah. All right, so now what we're doing here is we're positioning the H1 relative to the parent, right? This case, it's this box right here. And watch what happens when we do left of a negative property, okay? It's going to leave the box, right? Because, right, positive push, negative pull from web 1, positive push, negative pull. And you're like, well, I want it to leave the box, but I don't want it to be visible. So web 1 comes back in and saves us again. Overflow, right? We're going to use overflow hidden. This is why we had to learn all this stuff. And if we set the value to overflow hidden, what we can do now is we can incrementally, right, isolate this and use our dev tools to make this easier. Again, I'm just holding up the up arrow. And this is essentially what animation is, right? As we saw from web 1. Like we're just changing box model properties one at a time, one pixel at a time, and we're asking the browser to automate this process for us. And that's how we get animation. So we, right, and again, if we set this to overflow visible, okay, so to a web designer, we always know that it's still there, right? It didn't disappear. Okay, the values are, the elements are still there, right? They're just off screen. We're just hiding them off screen. So I'm gonna have this thing peek out like this. And where this becomes really useful for you, right, is all of the initial positioning of your elements. Once you get everything where you want it to be, you can go in and begin to style it. All right, thumbs, side thumb, up thumb, down thumb, quarter thumb. All right. So there's that. There's initial positioning of elements. All right. Let's go ahead and get a refresher on our pseudo classes. All right. Every time I do this, I'm always amazed at how little I see this technique used. This is one of the most useful techniques, right? So the previous technique of relative parent absolute child is one that we, like I talked a lot about in web 1. Like it's still very widely supported and widely used. And it, like I pick a site at random and say, look, this technique is still being used. And here's another technique that I see less frequently, and it's extremely useful, and we just don't use it. So let's get into this one. So one of my favorite things to do, right, is trigger the parent with the child, right? Trigger the child with the parent. Like, how do we trigger this element? Well, we have our pseudo classes of link, visited, and hover. And so for this one, we're probably going to be using hover, right? And we're probably going to be using active maybe, right? Click and hold, okay? So if we come into our pen for a second and we go pound stage, right? Colon hover, right? We just go BG red, right? Simple stuff, okay? Right, change the background to red when I hover over it. Easy enough, yeah. But what if you wanted to change the background of coffee, the H1 to red on hover? Well, some of you would come into this and go stage, I mean, not stage, but go H1, right? Colon hover, right? And we could make that a background of red. Right, so that's going to turn to red, and then when we hover over the H1, okay, our background is also red. Well, it's red on red, so we can't see it. So how about we change the color to red? There we go. Right. So now when we hover our H1, right, but this is where my mouse cursor is. I want to trigger something that is not on top of my mouse cursor or underneath the mouse cursor. right? And I don't want to have to use JavaScript to do this. JavaScript can do this, right? JavaScript allows us to click on stuff way, way over here and trigger something way, way over here. But there's always this mechanism, right? And this is, all right, there's already this mechanism. And hopefully every time you use technique, you're like, oh yeah, that's the technique that's the Colin technique. I didn't come up with this, but I want this to be used more. Is my cursor is over here, but I want to affect coffee way, way over there. So to do that, we're going to put these two techniques together. And this is basically going to say, when I hover over the stage, right, trigger what? Can you put these two techniques together and rewrite the selector? Anybody? How do I hover over the stage and affect the H1? Like, what am I writing there? And we'll make it yellow so we can actually see it, right? Right now, that silence is either confusion, disinterest, right? One of the two, we got to fix this. Yeah, so very useful technique. When I hover over the stage, right, do that, right? Make the background red. But then, instead of affecting myself, the thing that I'm hovering over, affect my child element, the H1. Watch what happens. Right, thumbs. I wish there was like a mind blown emoji, right? See what's happening here? We're affecting the child by triggering the parent. Okay, and this is a extremely useful technique for all of your properties, right? And then you can come into here, all right, make another H3 if you wanted to, and test, right? Check, and you can just start overloading these selectors. Right. And this, it's a very low cost, efficient way to do, like, we're doing multiple selection, right? And it's just, yeah, it's there, and it's so underutilized. So use it, right? Without doing all this, like, look, we wrote no CSS animations, we wrote no JavaScript to do this. It was just already a part of your basic selection, and all we had to do was rethink how we wrote our selectors. And just by changing the way that we wrote our selectors, right, we get this nice mechanism. So use it. All right, so there's a triggering the child with the parent. All right, and lastly, this is where we're going to stop for today, and so we're get into next class is we should be able to do very similar things with GSAP, right, GreenSock. And so the example here that we're going to be looking at next class is, oh, that's all well and good, Colin, but what if I want to play something and pause it or even reverse it, right? And we can't do that with CSS. And so with everything that we're doing, keep asking yourself is, where does HTML start and stop? Where does CSS start and stop? And if we can't do that with HTML or CSS, that's where JavaScript comes into play, right? So in 2020, we can't do this without JavaScript right now. Good? Yeah. All right, and that's where we're going to be in next class, is how do we add the JavaScript layer into our Google Doodle, right? We've added the HTML layer, we added the CSS layer. Now we're going to add in the JavaScript layer, right? And if you want, you can come in here and animate this thing, right? So just a real quick pound stage, right? H1, pound stage, H3. Okay, and these can be any elements. Right, set the opacity to 0 on the first frame, right? And then on the first frame, we're gonna set the opacity back to 1, and then we hover over way, way in the corner here, right? They show up, and if we wanted to fancify them, we can just have a transition, right? Is that a word? Sure. And what property are we transitioning? We're transitioning opacity in what time? 1 second. And we go way, way in the corner, right? We can begin to just take these really simple ideas, right, and add them to our Google Doodle. All right, last thing I need you to do is go to CodePen, right, log into CodePen. I guess I can put this into the chat. This is also linked out from the course website, but the chat is just as fast. I'll put this into the professor pen, put this in multiple spots so we can all get to it. let's see here. Up at the very, very top there, the professor pen, you can just copy and paste that. All right, I'm going to switch tabs here for a second. Okay. Oh no, I can't do that. I still gotta log in. All right, this is the Google Doodle template. All right, all you need to do is click use this template. And it's gonna take all this code right here and it's gonna put it to your account, right? And then the next class we can come in and modify it. I just wanna get us a setup to do staging on this. So go ahead and click on use this template. Good, good. Check with me. Everybody click and it's gonna do its thing. Okay. All right, I'm gonna do this as a sample test. Oh, then we need to log in and Netlify. Sorry, y'all, I forgot about our whole deployment process for a second. Let's go ahead and log in and Netlify and get this thing all set up. All right, so I'm gonna have to call. I have to call this as something else. So Google Doodle. Okay. It already exists. So, all right. So you've added this to your template, right? You've added this to your account, right? You should not see EW WebLab anymore. You should see your username / Google Doodle. So you have all this content in there. So once we're logged in Netlify, we're going to go ahead and deploy the site, and we can go. And Netlify makes this super easy. New site from Git. We're going to connect it to GitHub. Okay. I like the fact that they list the other Git providers. Okay, and there are many, many more. Okay, I'm going to stop here and say, look, this is a big deal, right? The big deal here is you're learning version control through GitHub, right? And if your company happens to use GitLab, you're like, I got this. Like, I got this, fam. I understand this. So no matter the tools that you use, right? Understand the concepts. Okay, so don't overlook this part. Like y'all, we've never used GitLab or Bitbucket in class, but you could easily pick it up because you understand the concepts of version control. All right, so go ahead and click on GitHub on that. And we're going to search for this thing called Google Doodle. All right, there it is right there. Man, I got a lot of them. I clicked on it. Sorry, I clicked on it kind of fast. Then we're going to go ahead and hit deploy site. Right. And again, what we're going to get with Netlify is continuous deployment, right? It's going to provide us this URL right there. This is a randomly generated URL, right? And that's what we're going to do in our class is animate this thing. So we practice on CodePen. We got this thing set up on GitHub and Netlify. Okay, Netlify is going to give us the ability to have HTTPS down here. I'm just doing a quick rehash of Netlify. Under deploys here, we get HTTP. Where did they put it here? Deploy settings, right? We get a HTTPS, we get a CDN, we get all the good stuff that we don't have to think about. We also get forms if we wanted to have forms. So, all right. Remember Netlify? Okay, we're gonna stop the recording on this and we are